So I just want to come on here and talk real briefly about having taqwa and why you shouldn't fear anything other than God, right? And I think fearing another person or fearing man or fearing any circumstance, in a sense, is a form of like anthropomorphism, right? Anthropomorphism, whatever, how you say that word. Really, what that means is that when you attribute like the characteristics of God to a human, or of a human to God, right? When you fear anything else, you fear a man, you fear something else, an image, like when you create a boogeyman for yourself. Most Def use this a lot, the boogeyman, because of Paul Mooney's joke, his comedy thing called the boogeyman. And the boogeyman, Most Def kind of explains it perfectly. Like, so in Paul Mooney's sketch, in his comedy, he was like telling a story how he was in the elevator with the white woman, and she clutched her purse. And so when they got out the elevator, he chased her down, and he didn't even want to take the purse. He just was like, well, the fact that she felt scared and felt like he was the boogeyman, he was like, well, I might as well play along. And so to black people, white people were the boogeyman, and to white people, black people were the boogeyman. And Mos Def kind of uses his alter ego in his album as like embracing the boogeyman, being like how Paul Mooney embraced the boogeyman and chased the woman down, but addressing throughout the album, he kind of addresses the whole stigma behind what the version of a boogeyman that he is, and he kind of breaks down those barriers and through his lyrics, so which I won't get into, but there's a greater point to that. Anyway, dismantling that with what? With showing people that we can love each other, right? That was kind of his answer. But anyway, I want to get to the bigger point about this. Putting fear in something other than God, right? If you create a boogeyman for yourself, which the media does a lot, they try to say Muslims are the boogeyman for years, for decades, and they have they have false flag attacks and all kind of craziness and all these reasons for it, why they had to invade this country, kill this leader, assassinate this guy, and so on and so forth. And they try to trick the public and to install fear into their hearts, right? And they're out. And as a Muslim, especially if someone like, look at the situation in Gaza right now, you can look at the military might that the opposing force has and be like, well, they're outgun us, they outnumber us, they're this and that. And you can be quite literally the victim of a genocide and still look at and be like, man, this is the boogeyman. These people are scary, right? And live in fear, right? And be scared by the bombs and things like that. And it's very valid. It's very just to feel that way. So why is having taqwa important? And what is the point that I'm getting to? So if you have true God consciousness, and you will see this in a lot of those people in Gaza, that they'll smile and say, Alhamdulillah, all praise to God. And because some of them have achieved this level of taqwa where they realize that they can't fear their enemy. They can't live in fear. They accept that this is the situation that they're in, and that there's nothing scarier than facing God and being on the wrong side. In fact, there's no amount of torture and pain that they can go through to deter them from that fact. So much bigger, right? So they understand that. So it's the second that you fear somebody, you give them power, right? And they realize that. That's why the people who are actually standing up and fighting and resisting, they don't fear death. You know what I mean? They're like, well, we're surrounded by it every day. And our enemies right next to us. And they end up doing the right thing. They stand up for themselves, right? Defending themselves. So, but if you live in fear, you can sit on the sideline and you will say things like, there's no point in doing anything, and give up. And I'm sure there's probably people that live and think like that, Well, so how does this tie into the boogeyman, and what am I talking about? If someone gives you an enemy to be afraid of, if they give you a thing, a person, something other than God to be afraid of, know that they're wrong and that they're trying to control you, right? Fear is a number one tactic, is the way to manipulate a person. It's like 101 for manipulation. is if you have someone scared, yeah, you control them by fear. That's how they keep slaves in check, right? And it's like the only way to be liberated from any other fear, because the emotion fear will always exist. You can't erase it. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It could be only transformed, right? So you take that fear that you have and you transform it and focus it onto Akhirah, onto the afterlife, and say, if I don't get my life together, if I don't purify my intentions, and if I don't place my heart and the fear that I do have in life into, well, if I don't do this, I will face the consequences in afterlife. Just like if I don't get food, I will starve. Just like if I don't defend myself when someone tries to break into my house, I can die, my family can get harmed when they don't need to. If I don't make hijrah and leave this area, if I don't travel from this place that is making it hard for me to practice my faith, making it hard for me to make money, oppressing me, and make hijrah and leave for the sake of God when I feel like it's obligated for me. But, even though I'm afraid of what's there, I don't know what's in the future, you still have to make that choice. So instead of fearing what's the unknown, fear what you know, is that in the afterlife you have to answer for your decisions. And guys, honestly, I'm not trying to just be another fear monger and tell you to be afraid of something. Like, I'm not, like, what I'm saying, I know it sounds like it might sound difficult to understand, but it is truly different when you place your priorities into Akhirah instead of material things, and it is a difference. So that fear of God and the fear of letting down your creator and that fear is not the same kind of fear that we understand. It's more like putting fire under your feet to be better, make you more conscious of your decisions, and it actually operates in a way that you end up thinking for yourself. You know what I mean? It's not something that another person, equal or lower than you, installed in your mind so that you can be timid and they can manipulate your actions. Rather, it's more of relatable to an instinctual thing of, here is danger, and so I better move to save myself from danger. And that danger being hellfire, essentially, right? So that is the difference. It's a safety. It's a safety net. And that is the only kind of quote unquote fear that you should have, is that, well, I should make my decisions consciously. Not so like that's so for the example, if someone is pointing a gun to you, you don't fear the gunman. You are cautious of the dangers that a gun has. That if they shoot you, that you can die. So then you make decisions based on that. But that's not being so scared that the gun, and the reverse is letting the gunman control you and say, give me your wallet and give me this and that. And now you're like, okay, well, here you go. I don't want to get die. That's a different type of fear. And I hope that makes sense. I know I kind of went off about a bunch of different things, but that's what the point I'm making. And that's what I think that is the bigger message when it comes to having taqwa, because you trust in God's plan, that even though sometimes you may not be able to see over the horizon, you may not be able to see past, you may not see a way out if someone is literally holding a gun to you, but there could be, if you know what I'm saying, like, you may not see anything working out in your life when you move to a new area because it's scary, right? But just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And so that's when you really have taqwa, when you trust God and do what you know you're supposed to do, rather than be afraid of the unknown and what could happen, and worrying about things that haven't happened yet. So that's kind of the message I'm trying to get out. But anyways, I hope if you have any comments, just leave them in the comments below. And I apologize if I said anything wrong, so Subhanakallah wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Until next time. Peace.